peak mountain, together with a great gathering of the Sangha of monks and a great gathering of the Sangha of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One entered the samadhi that expresses the Dharma called profound illumination. And at the same time, noble Teshvara, Bodhisattva Mahasattva, while practicing the profound Prajnaparamita, saw in this way. He saw the 5 skandhas to be empty of nature. And through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son or daughter of noble family train who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita? Addressed in this way, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said to Venerable Shariputra, O Shariputra, a son or daughter of noble family who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita should see in this way. Seeing the 5 skandhas to be empty of nature. Form is emptiness, emptiness also is form. Emptiness is no other than form, form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness are emptiness. Thus, Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness. There are no characteristics. There is no birth and no cessation. There is no impurity and no purity. There is no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no perception, no formation, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no dharmas, no I, dhatu, no mind dhatu, no dhatu of dharmas, mind consciousness dhatu, no ignorance, no old age and death, no end of old age and death, no suffering, no origin of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since the bodhisattvas have no attainment, they abide by means of Prajnaparamita. Since there is no obscuration of mind, there is no fear. They transcend falsity and attain complete nirvana. All the Buddhas of the 3 times by means of Prajnaparamita fully awaken to unsurpassable, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the great mantra of Prajnaparamita, the mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequaled mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering should be known as truth since there is no deception. The Prajnaparamita mantra is said in this way. Te ata om gate gate paragate parasangate bodhisoha. Thus Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound Prajnaparamita. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, Good, good, O son of noble family, thus it is, O son of noble family, thus it is. One should practice the profound Prajnaparamita just as you have taught, and all the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that whole assembly in the world with its hots, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One. Shandara Samaraya Me Te Ata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasangate Bodhisoha Baba Ganju Sanji Kaide Medo Jichi Lavadaji Mevadaji Chevadaji Jagi Vaji Medo Meshu Danji Jeling Koye Zoha Geyin Dunya Jeja Jehwadang Medon Bejen Dan Jewa Dan Domba Junjin Bun Zun Zun Yoji Rashi De Janin Na De Le Yo. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy Lamas high, wrap the sky of your Dharma body in massive clouds of knowledge and love, and let them pour upon the earth of your disciples as we are a shower of rain, teachings deep and wide. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. Edam Guru Radha Mandala Gamni Radhayami. Jadan Jodi Janam La Janju Badu Dani Jazuji Dagi Jini Jibe Zunam Ji Jola Benji Sanji Jubajo Jadan Jodi Janam La Janju Badu Dani Jazuji Dagi Jini Jibe Zunam Ji Jola Benji Sanji Jubajo.
What Tangasula Richimo than Makashugurata Kazogani, Diletan saw the John to the Lady Marvelende, that John to Saji, Talende, Lende Kutima, Lende, and the Shasamba, the Shadatus, the son of Judusha, Lende Katu Saji Marvel, Lende Shasamba, and then Shadatu Samba, son of Judusha, Lende Shasamba, the Lungua, laying about a Subaje. So. Susu Sambatala, Le Lanjutu Dembatan, let them debut Dembas Nije, let them debut Dembatala, Nabi Lende, Kabi Lende, Legendary Jen Dabasun, Tan Nabi Lende Saji, Kabi Lende Sa, Sumba Legendary Jen Dabo, the Maribe, Legendary Jen Damba, Lari Chimuku Saji Kuzultena, Shugut Yoba, Jatan, Jechu Changare, we. Olia Tin Somba Jibanga Jibadlua Somba Legend Iwa Jen Tembalas what the Maro each Kusultenshana.
So once again we are looking at Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment. And we're looking specifically at the section called Developing the Faith and Conviction in Karma and its Results, that is the root of all temporary happiness and certain goodness. So that's the major section that we're looking at. And under that there are three major categories. There's first reflecting on karma and its effects in general, and then reflecting on karma and its effects specifically, or the particulars of it, and then lastly, once one has reflected on karma and its effects in general and in specifically, how to engage in virtue and abandon non-virtuous activity. So these are the three categories. So when we first look at the category reflecting in general, we find the actual way to reflect in general, and then reflecting on the distinctions among the varieties of the karma. And then when we get to the reflection on the distinctions of the varieties of karma. We find the principal teaching on the 10 paths of action, and then the actual determination of the effects of actions, or what determines what action produces what result. And then under that category, the determination of the effects of actions, we find 3 major points: black action and their results, white actions and their results, and then a presentation of other classifications of karma. So we're currently under the category which is called the presentation of other classifications of karma. We will find that on page 239 in the English. And then under this category, a presentation of other classifications of karma, we find 2 major categories: the distinctions between, or the differences between, projecting and completing karma, and then karma whose results you will definitely or only possibly experience, or karma that is certain or uncertain.
What the super pensuji was what the pensuji was not tangarsure. And the lady la penjig little dojig leni, and then also susutabute, and the penjig gave him a race, penjig gave him by either, and the main baser, Tundu in baser. May is on who penjig little go a race, penjig gave him a race, Metchisadula, Metal and Derby, the water, Madubi doing any marbe, and the Garsovre. Misha go down, doing about now what and the Middletown and water, Chenrezig, the Gile, Penji Gile in the Maris, what the Doji Magi do what she was. Then Majestadu Maldo Mundo, the water Gi in the Bure, Gay do what she was. Penji Nasutabote, Penji gave him by the Doji de la Ne Guadamugo Niga Yoris. Tuji Magi Zuba Jaga Nashi doing it to Marbe, or to Sukalo, Magi in the Buddhist. Then Debbie the what to Sukalo, Nagi in the Buddhist. Duji Gi to Buddhist, what they don't have to do what the Lady Marbe?
Don't epa, then not to do to
about the Misha would know to the Kazon to his one. What the Jaga Nashi doing it to the Jiro.
Don't epa, not to do
about the Kamba member, me member, Junior, what the Sukalo. Magi do what she was. And Tundu double charge over in the Tundu double there, Magi pepper in the cooking as one in Beijing.
That's up.
Colea the water to get into water. The water gave to what she was there, and then doing it to Magi do what she was, and she had a gun of injury.
So the first section is called the distinction between projecting and completing karma. So this will be the first thing that we look at. So how do these 2 things work and differ? So projecting karma produces the actual basis within the realm that you are born into, and then the completing karma fills the details. So when we look at our current position, as an example, we see that we are human beings, so we necessarily had a virtuous projecting karma. So we first look at that. So the projecting karma is virtuous. Why? So what is the sign or reasons? We would say the reason or sign is that we are in the upper realms of cyclic existence. Because we are in the upper realms of cyclic existence, we necessarily have a virtuous throwing karma, or a virtuous projecting karma. So then the next thing is the completing karma. So we find that there is a fixed karma when we look at our projecting karma. So we are fixed as far as the realm which we live in the basis we are in, which is a human. But then we have to experience things we want to experience, and then also things we don't want to experience. So we have happiness that we want to have, but then we also have suffering experiences that are unwanted experiences. So those things are a result of a non-fixed karma. We have a mix of virtuous and non-virtuous karma that fills in the details of our existence. And then we find that there are times where we have beings who, even though they are in the upper realms as humans, might have illness or might have various things wrong with their eyes and malfunctions within their body and so forth. So we would say that these unwanted circumstances which are suffering come from a non-virtuous completing karma. But then there is also happy times that are experienced. And those happy experiences that are experienced within that human basis are as a result of a virtuous completing karma. So we find that there are both virtuous and non-virtuous completing karmas at work because we have the varieties of experience. Those happy experiences caused by virtue and those unhappy experiences caused by non-virtue. So then we look at another example, and that's the example of a dog, an animal, for instance. So the dog has a non-virtuous projecting or throwing karma. So why? What is the sign or reason? The sign or reason is that dog is in the lower realm of cyclic existence. So that basis is a lower realm basis. So the next thing is so that's a fixed projection. So that projection, that projecting karma, is a fixed karma, which is necessarily, in that case, non-virtuous because it led to the lower realm rebirth. The details within that existence are not fixed. So you see that a dog, even though he or she is in the lower realm of cyclic existence, there are experiences of happiness, and then there are experiences of suffering. Those happy experiences are caused by a virtuous completing karma, and those suffering experiences that the animal has to endure are caused by a non-virtuous completing karma. So we find a variety of karmas at work when we find the completion in both those examples of the human who has a projecting karma that's virtuous and an animal that has a projecting karma that's non-virtuous. Both have non-fixed karmas when it comes to the completing karma, those being both virtuous and non-virtuous, leading to both happy experiences of happiness and suffering. Digsum.
That they would tell that lechi gichi pengre toma pengre tisona jena lechi gichi pengre le momuge jo mom pengmares chigi jo bichi menos kundu jena lechi gichi mom pengre le momi le joji pengre kundu den zhen tumo what the to chi.
So then we ask the question, does one karma produce one rebirth? And then we find that in Vasubandhu's Abhidharma Kosha that there is an assertion that one karma projects one birth. But then we find a more a higher interpretation or within Asanga's compendium of knowledge. Rinpoche, the Dua, the Hlapa, the Dawa, the Dawa Yagadu. The Zu, the Lei Cheek, the Jewa Cheek. Sangha Yagadue. Okay, so the better interpretation, I just wanted to make sure that I didn't misinterpret and say something's higher. So the better interpretation of karma is in Asanga's compendium of knowledge, where there's an assertion that one karma can produce multiple rebirths or can produce one, etc. So the Abhidharma Kosha is written according to the great exposition school, the Vaibhashika school, which is not as stable, is not as solid. Jeju ja drup na. Drup na.
Inchi na.
Inchi ras.
Jaju jadu.
Drup, okay.
Ole tin sumbal no sumba.
Okay. Ja drup.
Nyuwa ngebe le ne sai ngweji le. Nyuwa ngebe le ne sanji du sheba dan saba kan yimba o. Nyuwa ngebe mangebe le sanji du shela masaba kan yimba o to malba.
So we're in okay, so we're on page 240 now. We're going to move forward to the next section. karma that is certain or uncertain. Tabbed off, the section here is karma whose result you will definitely or only possibly experience. And it starts with a quote from Sangha's levels of yogic deeds. The logo.
다 요한테 요한에비 렌 사용하지 도와 사용하지 레 상진도 시바다 사바강이 뭐 상진도 시바다 사바강이 뭐 먹이죠 먹어와 줘도 주는 뭐 셰고선 주는 산다네 아니 먹이죠 시바이나 상진도 시바 사바레 어떻게 빌레스 저번에 봐도 용그레스 상진도 시라 마사빌레도 그걸로 네 요한만 해봐는 저번 요마요 내봐요 말레스
So in the levels of yogic deeds, it says karmas whose result you will definitely experience is that consciously done and accumulated. And then it says, I'll read the rest. Karma whose result you are not certain to experience is that consciously done but not accumulated. So first, we begin with karma that is accumulated. So here, when we look at the 10 non-virtuous activities, if we engage in those activities, and before we do so, there is a premeditation that we think about it for a long period of time. Then that becomes a karma that is accumulated, and then as a result of it being a karma that's accumulated is necessarily a karma that you will definitely experience the result of. So you are certain to experience the result of. Dikson.
What that 다든마 내빌레도 망에빌레들 니시사주고는 시바다 뒤주고는 송도셔와스 어떤 자지 사진이 되네 시사주고는 내바다 망에바다 시사주고는 시그레스 지제 뒤주고는 송도요와 진내뉴조 통주뉴조 레너전은 올레그로와 다 시사주고는 시바도 어때이 말에 시빌레 사빌레 마사빌레 what does it marba shesaga cheba what does kabdo ya jangaso rosjisina ngo tendo yagondo.
So tambo dudushe then a sheba then a sapa the sum giant sheba
shesa de ja shesa lari shu konon do sheba de sabi cheba sheba sabi cheba marba
lesser
sheba de sabi cheba tomba shebile and Saba, she believes the Garsagre, Sabi lessons the Garsagre, Masabas and the Gars, the Sond Led Marbe, and the Woolman Dog Majid later.
Then the Chanka, the giant Sheba, Ewa, the Chanka.
Neba the Mangabiles, Mashebala, Shesa Jugone Sheba, Sajijire, Shesa Jugone Sheba Satana, Shebile, Sabile, Dog Majidus Marbe, or the Sajijire. 뒤주고는 송도 쇼 통주년조 제내년조 랜전젤런조 송올레로 어드레 다른가 저 시사주고는 시바도 어드레
then tambo ngeba dangme ngeba
ngeba 망해봐 가도
the giant do the she
do the shebas
okay. Okay, so we'll do. Okay, so then when we look at Giant Sheba's outline, we find the outline is those karmas that are definite to experience and those that are uncertain. That's the first category. And then the next category, we find a combination of the explanation of karma that is done and then karma that is accumulated. And within that we find karma that is not accumulated. So karma that is done but not accumulated. So we find karma that is done, karma that is accumulated, and karma that is done that's not accumulated. So we find those explanations, and then we go on to find it from the viewpoint of the three types of certainty of experiencing results, and that's relative to when. So there are the three types of experiencing it the here and now, so the results experiencing it here and now, experiencing it after taking a rebirth, so then in the next life, and then the next category of experiencing it another time, so in future rebirths, not this life, not the exact next life, but in future lives. So that's the next category that we find. Okay. Sache laso.
Sheba Sabi Chaban is Larisha de Dua. Sheba Sabi Chaban, Tiniles, Sayumoji Tiniles, Shebi like Lake Ashena, Samba, San and Lutangaki, Gunan Kaimbos, Shebi Les again there, Samba, San and Lutangak Gunan. And then not going on the Marbe. But now Suju Suju Sane, Samba Sane, Lujugun Sujuba Yina, Shebile is a Marbe. Shebile. And the Sujuba Majiba Langusane, Samba Sane, Lunga Gunawa, Kasure. What the Shebile? Then Louis Marbe, Louis. What the Sane, the Sheba Lunga Gunawa. Shebile. I knocked the Nobajetin Rabi Marbe. Sheba.
Ale, Salo Dong, Yene Sumachuna, Dene the Sapile, Yene Chapile.
The Sujeba Marda. Samba on Sane, Luda Nagi Gunan.
Lesso.
Sujugu Sane, Sujugu Samba, Sujugu Sane, Luda Nag Gunan was. Lujugun Sujeba.
Lesso.
Sujugu Samba on Sane. Lujugun Sujeba Yina, Sujeba Leres, Sujeba Shibile, and Komagogu Sane, Samba Sane, Komaguba Yina, Komaguba Shibileres,
Okay, let's so. Yene the Jew Rimbo Salodang Mar. The Chapa Yimba. The Chapa Yin. Okay, two chain up. So then we find in the same text in Sanga's level of yogic deeds, where it says, what is karma that you have done? An action that you have thought about or that you have consciously set into motion, either physically or vocally. So here there is an action that you have actually thought about doing. So I asked Rinpoche the difference, and it's not thinking in this very long period of time. It means that you've thought to do and done it. So you've thought about doing it, and then Rinpoche, the sangha sa nguje the dundang nangla, the ni yurbe gangin sene the NGK, the ni the samodang cheek, the ni this the longa.
Shebile Gashena Samba, Sujugu Samba Ina, Shebile Saguraba, Piji Jeroda, Samba, San and Lumakun Laws, Lugile. What to call Shebile in Jeroda, Shebile.
Yene, the Sana, Kona, the Shebile in
Samba, Kona, Samba, San, and then Lumakun Les on du. Lugile, Nagilete, Nazo de Jad Marba.
The Nietzsche go in go.
San down Sujugu Sane, Sumajibaina,
there,
Shibile, there is an agreement.
Digrebe.
Taina, what the Taji.
So what I'm asking Rinpoche about, just so I translate it clearly, is in English looks like there's two separate points being made here. One that you have thought about or set into motion. So Rinpoche said that in looking at the Tibetan, this is something that we actually can be up to interpretation, because it can be read in such a way that it could say that you've thought about and then consciously set into motion, but there doesn't seem to be that in the Tibetan it's very short. So it's difficult to see if it's to be read, thought about, and that you have consciously set in motion. So thought about it and then done it. And in terms of thought about it, you look at your object of observation to kill or something. But it also, Rinpoche says that it could be looked at in two ways, saying if you've just thought about it but not done it, then is that necessarily karma that you have done or not? So it's up for interpretation in this case. And Rinpoche said we have to look. He said daki daki che, something that we have to look into in that case. If it's something that, if it can be a karma that is done without actually doing it, in the case of, for instance, a killing. If someone has thought about killing, not in that extended period, but just thought about it, then does that meet the qualification for it to be a karma that is done? Because the way the English looks here and the way it could be read in the Tibetan, it looks like that is the case, and that there are two things being stated here, as opposed to one point that's being put together. So we can look at it in those two different ways. One, that you've thought about it and then consciously done, and in another way you can look at it in that, thought about it or consciously done it. So those are two ways to look at it. So Rinpoche then went to the various non-virtues. So he said if we look at it, a killing, if we've, in the case of the first way, thought about it and then killed, then this is a karma that is done. Thought about, then stolen, then this is a karma that is stealing that is done. Thought about it and then engaged in sexual misconduct, then this becomes a sexual misconduct that is karma that is done. So we would apply that to the other four non-virtues that we find in the speech as well. So these are the three non-virtues of the body. Okay, they kanga lason.
Da shebile kashena samba sane le danga kuna ha sni jaba ina.
Lesso.
Samba sana suju sane su ma jaba ina. Shebile jaba ina. Shebile de ne lunga le mi ma chos wu wa. Shebile de ka zonga so le danga le mi chos la ro. Da samba suju sane su ma jaba ina. Shebile yin. Ne lunga le ma isa wu.
Lesso.
So
now we find a consequence, though, to looking at it in those two ways. Because if we look at it in two ways, then it contradicts its own definition, because it says physically or vocally. So when one of the qualifications that it's part of the definition is physically or vocally, and if we get into the idea that by thinking about it alone, this then becomes a karma that is done, then it falls out of the realm of the definition, because then it becomes mental. If it's something we're thinking about but not actually carrying out. So then that becomes problematic if we interpret it as those two things, as and interpret it as if that line is saying that that's separate, or that alone qualifies it to be a karma that's done, because then it falls out of the side of the next part of the definition.
What the shibile to what Rijabon da Sabile, Nabajubu Matuba, that and the Malan to Shebatan, what the Juju Marbe, or the Jud Maimbi, and the Lake but the Sabile is. Sabile is. That the Saba said the things are Maguchu, the Junior Maguchu Shegus on Junior Masantabaina, Sabares, Saba. So Jugus on Junior Masanta and the Sabas against what the Junior Masantamba things are. Maguchu Shegus on Junior Masantane, Maguchu Sheba Ina, Saba Sheba the Saba Niga in Jerva. Maguchu Junior Shegus Santa and the Maguchu Majeba Ina, Saba in Sheba Maila Marva. Saba, Sabile, Nabachubo, Sabile, Takante, Sujugu Sane, Junimasan Tabat in Samarbe, Junimasan Tabat Saba, Sabile, what the Kanta Dibachibi in Sare, Magajumu Sungu Sane, Junimasan Tana, Gawashi in Sare, Deba Magoch, Sagu Sane, Junimasan Tana, Dibat Chibi in Sare, Jud Dibachi. Chuchone, what the Jubut Tamares Sabile, Naba Juba Matubat, and that Malan to Shebatan, what the Sunkalo, Saba Mares, Junior Masantam, Deba Shech of Mares, Masheba Shebatan, what the Jubute, Sabile Mares, what the Katurus, Ilajana?
Then Tambo, the Jew Rimbo, Sanlodang, the Sapa, the Mutambo.
Mago Shego San Junimasan Tabaina Sabaris. sabiles what there is diba chibis.
Less so.
Tamalat Sujiba, Malat Sujiba, Malatangaro. What the Saba Maris, Judim San Tabadan,
The Chepa.
Diba Chibumaris,
Less so.
Diba Chunjuris, Jubutu, Diba Chunjure, Saba Mare, Sabi Leina, Diba Chibugudus,
Less so.
Kazongazo, Sabi Leide, Jungan Josun Jukusa Marbe,
Less so.
Jusen Disa
Less
Marbe,
so.
Saba Yide, Junimbo, Diba Tante, Saguin, Junim San Tambala, Saba.
Less so.
Diba Chibis.
Less so.
Jungan Josun Sama said, Ul Umarish, Uma, not a nerdishat.
Less so.
Saba le Jungan Josun Sama Yodi, the Jungan Saba Yina Jungan Josun Sama Chagamudu.
Less so. So that's what all we'll point out in looking at the karma that is done. So now we'll move on to karma that is accumulated. So karma that is accumulated is necessarily, if we're looking at it in terms of non-virtuous activity, it is an action that falls categorically within the 10 non-virtuous activities that excludes the type of activity that excludes any among the 10 types of activity. So what that means is there are 10 types of actions. If they are carried out and fall categorically under any of these 10, then they are necessarily not karma that is accumulated. A karma that is accumulated is necessarily the greatest level. So if it's a non-virtuous activity that's accumulated, so if it's any among the 10 non-virtuous activities that's carried out and accumulated, then it is the greatest level of non-virtue. If it's any among the ethics which abandons the 10 non-virtuous activities that is accumulated, then it's the greatest level of virtue. So we find these 10 types of actions that exclude it from the category. So when we look at karma that is accumulated, we find that it's something that is thought about for a long period of time. And then engaged in. So then if it is that case where, for instance, we have a killing, if there is a premeditation and someone thinks about it for a long period of time and then engages in it, it's a karma that has been done that's accumulated. So this is the greatest level of non-virtue. So we apply this same kind of thinking to any of the 10 non-virtuous activities. And realize that if we engage in them and they have these qualities, if we've thought about them for a long period of time and there's this premeditation, then any among these 10 non-virtuous activities, when carried out with those qualities, become the greatest level of non-virtue. And it is also, later on, we'll get into the points of it carrying those 3 other qualifications of the preparation and then the actual carrying out and then the final step. So the actual pre-step, the engaging, and then the actual rejoicing later, the final step being also what we find when we find this greatest level of non-virtue present. So this is how we look at all of the virtuous deeds and non-virtuous deeds, by understanding that once they are accumulated, they become the greatest level of degree. Dikso.
Tapana su jogu san junam san tansu majebayina sabaro
Sapa.
sabaro tasu jogu san junam san tansu jebayina anna sheba ta saba niga den marbe sheba ta saba niga den zamarbe
Yeah.
niga de zaro sabileina jongon josu sai macha 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 ni jago do ne kason tangule jongon josu sama de pasi joji do uma de ja uma de no de Sabile na jongon josu sai macha 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 ni do ni
Sapa dhamma
pasu chuji ge jongon josu san sa de shela saba su jugu san ne su jeba ina shela saba ro de jongon josu san wa des wo de ja
Yanja Surunang.
다 단단데 가도 사바세야 다 간다 주님무산단 디바쳐진서 디바쳐 울릉하게 레인한다 마인다 다 간다 주님무산단서도 사바레스 사바 물론도 셰바도 그 사바 마레스 디바쳐중레스 어디 된다 대인서데
Lesso. So when we look at these two topics, karma that is done and karma that's accumulated, we can find that there are these four permutations. So we can find first a karma that is accumulated but not done in the case of a karma that's thought about for a long period of time but then not carried out. So this is an example of a karma that is accumulated but not done. When we look at the case of a karma that's done but not accumulated, we find it in the case of a karma that is engaged in but not thought about for a long period of time. It's just carried out without that long premeditation. So then that becomes an example that's a karma that's done but not accumulated. And then we find in the case of a common locus, a karma that is done and accumulated, we find the example when we look at killing, for instance. Someone thinks about killing for a long period of time and then carries out the actual killing. So here we have the premeditation coupled with the carrying out. So we have both a karma that is done and a karma that's accumulated. And then we look at that fourth possibility, something that's neither, and we can find many examples of things that are neither, such as a tree. These are the points that are made. So when we look at what distinguishes the intensity of a karma, we find that once it's been accumulated, it has the greatest level of intensity, the greatest degree. So if it is a virtuous action, it's the largest level of virtue. If it's a non-virtuous action, it's the largest level of non-virtue. But if we have an action that's done in a dream, for instance, or done unknowingly, and so forth, then we find that this makes it a very small karma. So there are these 10 types or 10 ways in which an action be carried out that makes it into an actual small deed as opposed to a great level or a large deed. So we find that there are these distinguishing factors that make it different.
다 몰라도 제발로서 주부터 마사빌레레스 디바 치바 인사마레 마사빌레레스.
So the karma that's done in a dream is something that's not accumulated. It's not a great non-misdeed. If it's a non-virtue done in a dream, it's not a great misdeed.
다 때라 오버 도와야 메지시데스 때네 어때 수주라 메제 마진라나 메제 로인라 메제 준 참아치주 나지 듄들 메제 듄데무데 마진라네 나지비 바스 메제 듄셰고도 메제 듄 이지 송라 때네 메제요 마레스 메니바요 마레스 셰송아 달라 오버 도와야 수주 셰라 마사바네 수주 셰라 마사바 수주 셰라 마사바네 케비 셰바다 말란드 셰바다 체도 마제바다 와드르게 와드숙갈로 소제 셰빌레레 마사바인스 마사바이고 디바치빈서 마로와 소제 셰라 마사바드제 다드네 니바 살라 마제바네 수제비 셰르 여레모 제수 도지 ane su no maje ba was sa sa de june mo santa ane su maje na sa la maje ba res tere doa shela sa ba ni ga yima tere doa shela sa ba june mo su jo santa su je ba ina shela sa ba res o de ane meni ba ma tu bi su je ba ta je dos o de su je bi jung jo so sa les ba su ji go ndel ja shinde shela sa ba Juno Sujogo Santa, Juno Lug Sundan, Nagi Juno Chico Santana, and what they got Luigi Sundan, Nagi Shibaina, Shela Sabares, Shela Saba Inde, Jugun Josun Sayu, and then lay measures, Pasushi Hotel to Kunua, Del Jas and
Del. So when we look at the karma that is accumulated and then karma that is done, and we look at it according to the compendium of determinations again, we find that we can take those 7, in the case of non-virtues, non-virtues of the body and speech, and apply these same 4 permutations to them. And the reason that we only say those 7 and we don't refer to the 10 is because those 3 non-virtues of the mind don't carry the 4 permutations in the same way, because that second permutation is not present. You don't have a karma that is accumulated but not done. So you always have, when there's an accumulation in the case of mental activity, then it's done at that point. So that's why we only say we have these 4 permutations in relation to the non-virtuous activities or virtue of the body and the speech, making for a total number of 7. So if we use the example of killing, and we try to find what those permutations are again, we find a karma that is first done but not accumulated, for instance, is a killing that is done but not done with a long period of thought, not done in a way that one is knowing, or one that's done in a dream, one that is done with any of these factors that we find here in the text. So that categorically falls into a karma that is done but not accumulated. So that's the first permutation. The next permutation, when we look at a karma that is accumulated but not done, this is the category that the mental karma is excluded. So we can find in the case of physical a karma that is accumulated but not done, where there is a long premeditation, thinking about doing it for a long period of time, but then the action not being carried out. So still, in that case, this is a karma that is accumulated, but a karma that isn't actually done. So we find and there's still action there in the premeditation. So then that fills the next category, accumulated but not done. The next category, that which is both accumulated and done, we find in the example of killing, where there is a premeditation, thought about it for a long period of time, and then the actual carrying out of the killing, and this being done in actuality, not in a dream. So this, in this case, this is the greatest level of non-virtue, and when we look at Basuchuji Jetsun's commentary, we find that it's this one where we find those 3, the preparation, the actual action step, and then the completion, the final step present within that 3rd category of that which is accumulated and done. And then something which is neither is easy to find. So, the Dixon Rinpoche.
This way. What the Shela Saba no Munghamani Matubi Sujaba Tanjidos. Shela Saba to what the Munghamani Shela Saba to Salamajiba Nimaimbi and the Sujaba Tanji, Sujubi Letanji, Juman Josun Letanji what the Shela Saba is. Tamaji Masaba. Masund Matubi, what the Kangalajan Digres, what the Jetsan Marba, Tamajin and Najibi by attention to Chediva Shalasa, Tamajin and Najibi Pato Jingatu Marutu, Majitu Uruta. Tamajin and that Hamanda Majin and Shela Mazapa and the Malan Shebala Suba, Tamache, Majin and Shela Sabane, Shela Sabane, and Komago San Junior Mosanton, Komamago Paterwa, Shela Sabane, Komago San, and the Komakuba Inaju, Juman Josu Masumba, and then some of the Matu Jeba, what the Dabin in Barita. Imagine and Najibi ba Bayan, Tejin to Chediva Shalasa, Hamana Jajus. Tamajin Shela Masaba, Malan Shebatan, Tamache, Niba the Shela Sabane, and what they and Salamajiba, Sujibi Goma gu juni masanta goma maguna shela
Sapa
sala
Macheba.
majibares
Lesso.
shela saba no goma gu santa goma gu bayina shela saba jungan juzun sawa
Lesso.
what the naji jeda kan dabur
Okay. Two chena.
Yeah.
The Drew. Okay. Selpudu
Yeah.
Gangisena Dun. Okay.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. So then we've gone through this first one, the killing. So then we have another 6 non-virtues, if we were looking at it in terms of non-virtue of the body and the speech, that we would apply this same kind of formula, the same kind of logic to. So we would then, that's why it says, also understand in the same way as appropriate the non-virtuous actions from stealing through senseless speech. So this is listing the other 6 that we would come across when we're looking at it in terms of body and speech. So we look at the next one, stealing, we would look at it the same way. So if you engage in stealing that is in a dream or done unknowingly, then this categorically falls under a stealing that is done but not accumulated. If you think about stealing for a long time but don't engage in the actual stealing, then this becomes a stealing that is a karma that is accumulated but not done. If you then think about it for a long time and then engage in the stealing, then this becomes a karma that is done and accumulated. And in Basuchuji Jetsun's case, he's saying that this meets those. This is a karma that meets those 3 standards of the preparation, so thinking about it for a long time, carrying out the actual step, and then the final step of not seeing anything wrong and rejoicing in what you've actually done. So, as a translator's note, you see regret up here that disqualifies it. So the opposite of regret would be that rejoicing. So that's why Basuchuji Jetsun's explanation that says that the 3 steps is suitable because it's absent of this regret. It has that rejoicing step. So just as a note, just want to make sure I'm translating it properly and clearly. So then we would look at stealing in that way, and those would be the 3, and then the 4th permutation is easy to find. It could be a tree or anything. So the rest of those non-virtuous activities that we find, we would use this same way of looking at them. And that's why it says to also understand in the same way. So that's what's meant by that.
Yeah, you na sen no sen lota sung to de tel mani ba yo maris sala ma je ba yo maris mani ba sala ma je ba na sen ju mo san ta na sen de ba sa ba re ma to ma sa ba yo maris no sen ju mo san ta na no sen de ba sa ba re ma to ma sa ba yo maris lota ju mo san ta na lota ke de ba sa ba re ma sa ba yo maris e je sung la mani ba me jins
sapa ma chepa yo mare.
Sala majiba yo maris sala majiba.
Lesso, okay.
Jini musantan ne.
Lesso. Sapa dang chepa.
Sapa majiba yo maris.
Lesso.
Sala shebi chandras.
Lesso, sala chepa chop.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll do.
Yeah.
Okay, so then when we move on to the 3 of the mind, so the last 3 of the 10, we would find covetousness, harmful intent, and wrong view. So those, the reason that we say there isn't that second permutation is because in the case of the mind, there is never a time where there's a karma that's accumulated but not done. Because once the mind thinks about it for a long period of time, in the case of covetousness, harmful intent, or wrong view, then it's already done, because that's the activity of the mind. So once there is this thinking about it for a long period of time, it's done the activity. And that's why there is never a case where there's a karma that's accumulated but not done. And that's why that second permutation isn't present in that. We would say if it is accumulated, it is necessarily done. So we would find that excludes that possibility.
Iji sung la tenen doa ni shibi maji ka na she la saba to ma to mu do ji ma to mu ta mu do ji ma ji she la saba iji sung bu de le she la saba ma do ane she la ma saba to sala ma je ba ta o de ma je ji ma saba ka ga yo ma ro ta ma ji ka na ma ji ma to mu do
then it musum ye
ma ji iji sung na sen ju ni ma san ta na saba ro ta
the saba yin.
Saba de.
The saba yin and chebin chop.
Ode.
Then Musum.
Saba ina shebi chawndruta. Shela sabi matmatumluwa. Matombo yo marisata.
So we don't find, in the case of any of the mental activities of the non-virtues such as covetousness, harmful intent, or wrong view, that have an accumulation that's not done. So that possibility, that permutation is excluded when we look at these things logically. That's not present. Okay, so it's time to hand out cookies and so forth, so take a break.
Stand by.
No, it's fine. Oh, there we go.
Dixon.
다 내망에 더 시사주고는 시버차. 다 뒤주고는 송도요들. 뒤주고는 통주윤주, 진내윤주, 랜더신런주. 송어들현들다.
So we've gone through the section that deals with certain and uncertain, or definitely or possibly, and then the next section that deals with the karma that's done, and then accumulated, and then not accumulated. So now we get into the three fruitions, and that is the karma that you experience here and now, the karma that you experience in next rebirth, and the karma that you experience later on. So I think it's 241 in the English.
다 듣는 것들에 다 뉴왕에 발한 데비 뉴유 뒤죽고네 소모스 와도 그 인상 같은 것도다 그 인상 같은.
Okay, so we're on page 241, and it says, from the viewpoint of the time at which you experience a result, there are three types of certainty of experienced results of karma.
다 뉴왕 네발라 데비 뉴왕 뒤죽고네 소모스 통주윤주 진내윤주 통주윤주스나 천들 사비 레전드 천들 중앙에 레들라 통주윤주지 레스 진내윤주스나 저와 셔마 데베 미오간들라 진내윤주지 저와 셔마 펜질 되는 데베 미오게 레들라 랜더진라 윤주게 레스 와도쿠즈 라자나 도도 안 올마칼 형래.
So we look at these three types of karma. These are the three results, or the three possible results. Times of result, it's probably best. Three possible times of result. So we have karma that gives rise in the here and now, and that's referring to karma that gives rise to a result in this life. Karma that gives rise to, the karma that is experienced after taking rebirth. So that's referring to karma that one experiences in one's next life. And then karma that is experienced at another time. That's referring to karma that one experiences in many lifetimes later. So one that is experienced here and now, one that's experienced in our immediate next life, and then karma that's experienced in many lifetimes later, or at another time in another life that isn't this life or our next life.
어제 다드네 어데 뉴왕에 발라 데브뉴 뒤죽고는 소모스 텔라 통주라 뉴왕네 디인제보 천드니라 메반조오스 디인제보 레디인제보 천들 사자베 레근제보 천들 메바데 통주뉴줄라 그래서 뉴왕오 텔라 나세시나 아네 천이의 요와 니신은 장집에 들 사진이 되네 천이의 요와 니신네 아 담부 천이의 와데 천이 다 답은 내셔데 렌드 천들사네 천들 레비미용들 통주용조 천들 레사 천들사 레딩 레버데 디 지와 셔만 미용들 제네용조로 레딩 레버데 지와 셔만 펜질 미용들 네 랜더진라 용조로스 와들라나 천이들에 버다 된다도 되이버래 된다 되지 다 됐네 다 이와래요 통주윤주 레들 제도지 들라이나 제 대양 제대에서 왔던 마 통주윤주 레옹래 어떻게 알아지려잖아
Decent. Okay.
질러서봐
Okay, so then when we have the three categories of karma that in time that we experience the karma. So karma that's experienced here and now, karma that's experienced after taking rebirth, and karma that's experienced at another time. And when we look at Jayan Sheba's outline, we find here he breaks it down into definitions and then divisions. So the definition here is basically referring to what is meant by karma that is now in the future rebirth and then in many lifetimes later. So here what is meant is that karma that is experienced here and now is experienced in this lifetime. Karma that's experienced after taking rebirth is experienced in next lifetime. And karma that's experienced in another time is karma that's experienced in many lifetimes later. So here we have the definition being then presented, and then the various divisions. So we find first the definition here: karma that you experience here and now is the effect of actions which ripen in the very lifetime in which you do the actions. So here we have the definiendum and then the definition of it right there. And then it goes on to show the various divisions. So here it says there are 8 divisions of karma that are mentioned in the level of yogic deeds. So 8 divisions of karma related to this category. So that's what we'll go on to get into. So we first have definitions and then we have the divisions.
Le dans l'enjeu dans ta ngasu tsendi le dans l'enjeu dans siba quoi marbe siba la tawa shechi sambe ne ane magawa tsendi nywa wosa ane tsendi l'enjeu ane sa tonwa la suba l'enjeu je ane quoi siba la tawa shechi was tawa shechi peji tengi sarbe ane ngama 조지 나지 안에 잡아지게 되네 그 주지고였으나 안에 줄로데스 그 세셔만 사는 매니저다 천들마도 산타 매니저와 그 줄로데 안에 조지 배운 저까지 주지고요 다 주지바도 줄로바도 야버리데 주지제나스 다그 줄로바도 주르게 매버선 손이 닫고 꼬라져야돼서 고란도스 전전에 야 조직에 안에 다 축구라 잡아야 아버지 주지나스 어떤들은 다 그때는 다 축가르지 거르다 아 그때는 든 천들로 dan스 천들 산당주 말 치시마 벤질 산당 오르스 천들 따와 천들이 르당 롱쉐당 시발 코날 산당에 어디 레마 무사샤 되게 레버드 천들 빈 오서 말배 시시만 벤질 산다바 이나 어디 거와디 근데 연설들 명화지면와 대야 제데 르당 르스는 선디 르마르베 소수르 이다 가둘라 수바 롱슈사 통알라 수바 캄바다 카르다 어디 롱슈 마르베 롱슈 세바선 다 코아르 그 본보 선디 르당 롱슈 세발라 tawa shechi sambe nes tawa de chendel jibul santane oti wangi diba sasha ba ina sambe ne sasha bi diba magwa juro magwa de debute chendel nyuan juros chendel de ne le de debute chendel nyungres chendel nyungres tonchu nyungres ya college lo kuzul cha kajil lo
leso then Tambo Joje the Kon Garnya Lanchun
Joje nan do musashi do maji ku chuje na she menjiro
leso
maji chuje na she maro
leso
ta ku pachadan lu du anu ku se shema san jiao shema penji san menjiro da ta chu gar je ku chuje go da chu lu ba de yabar de chu chujes
then e ko
yon ku ko je de mo Coraggio, that's coraggio, but they have chooses. And few courageous good tears, send the Lutons. Seshima Benji Santan, Sandal Santan, your mother, Sandal Luton, Longshut, Sibal, Santan Shabi, Dibasa Shabi, Dibag and Debug and Sandal Means. What is a marba?
So then we'll read here. From the viewpoint of time at which you experience a result, there are three types of certainty of experienced results of karma. Experiencing it here and now, which is in this life. Experiencing it after taking rebirth, so in one's next life. And experiencing at another time, so in lifetimes, future lifetimes. So then it begins to define the first one, karma that you experience the here and now, is the effective actions which ripen in the very lifetime in which you do the actions. It says there are 8 such types of karma mentioned in the levels of yogic deeds. So we find the definition here, and then the divisions will begin. So the first division gets into non-virtuous actions that you have done with a predominant attached attitude of looking after your body, resources, and existence. So here, this is referring to the non-virtuous activities that are done related to the things of this life. So when we find the story of Lord Ithaca, who came upon a person who was engaged in studying a text. So Lord Ithaca came up to him and said, this is wonderful what you're doing, you should be practicing Dharma. And then the person couldn't figure out why Lord Ithaca had said this. And then the next day Lord Ithaca came upon him and he decided, well, if that's not practicing, then circumambulating a stupa must be. So he began to circumambulate a stupa. And Lord Ithaca came up and said, this is very good what you're doing, but you should be practicing Dharma. And then after a series of these experiences, the man finally said to Lord Ithaca, what do you mean? What is, practicing Dharma? I've been circumambulating, I've been studying. And Lord Ithaca said, you've been doing all of those for the things of this life. Throw away this life, and then you'll begin to practice Dharma when you're looking towards your next life. So here, this is being attached to our resources, attached to our body, attached to this existence itself, because of and thinking of it in terms of this life, and then reacting accordingly without the proper attitude, which is looking towards the things of our next life. So this it says with a predominant attached attitude. So this attached word is referring to grasping at it as this life's body, this life's resources, this life's enjoyments. So when this word grasping is used next to those, Rinpoche clarified that that's what it's speaking of, the things of this life, and why it's a negative thing. It becomes dharma when it's projected, or it's directed rather, at next life. It's not for the purpose of gaining things in this life.
This way. Le dans l'enjeu de Siba la tawa shichi sambi ne diba magawa sa suna le diba nga ga diba la sa suna tin diba te sendel yung res marbe.
So if we
sendel yung res goro nyo anjo wa wos nyo anjo wa wos rwa. 통주 뉴즈로 선들 뉴와 통주 뉴즈로 대임바레 다다달라 마타와 시지 상비네스 다달라 마타와 천디 르당 롱쉐당 세발 마타와제 마타이 상베 안에 안데서 그걸로 가와레스 가와우스 가와딘 데베드 비지 선들 미용고지레 가와우스 다달라 마다 선디 르당 롱실 마다 세시만 벤지선 다가데드 마르베 나 총문데도 초조베 제부송도 시바 제부 총문란디 제부 집이 랑송 마르베 제비 중고 되게 70만 페이지를 산다가 주고 말이야. 제비 중고랑 제비 중고 되게 70만 페이지를 산다가 70만 페이지 모두 도와드는 얘기지. 그 시비 들라 저지 디빌레도 가지라지산 제비든 이제 가자. 와데 제비 중고 되게 70만 페이지를 산다는 거 와도 말이야.
Less so.
어떤 라고도 아.
Less so.
코알링 야반주네
맞아요.
타바산단디 안에 시리라도 몸비세데 티바첸보 총원된도 조주 총 제부 총원 어디도 라고도 아.
Less so. So if we engage in non-virtuous actions with the predominant attachment towards looking after our body and the resources and the existence, this life, then this becomes an action which you experience in the here and now, one that you experience in this life. Then it says virtuous action, then nipa gewa yin. Nipa gewa yin.
니바 그와로
Okay, so
선들 못하나 안고 어떤 게 뉴스함에서 그와래는
So the next one, virtuous actions that you have cultivated with a predominant attitude of not looking after these, is an attitude of renunciation, a desire to definitely emerge, an attitude that isn't focused on the things of this life, the body of this life, the resources of this life, the enjoyments of this life, the existence itself of this life. Because when we look at Tisha's lamp for the path to enlightenment, and it says, understand that there are persons of three capacities, small, medium, and great. When we look at what the aim of that small capacity practitioner is, it says, know that by whatever means, those who by whatever means seek for themselves no more than the pleasures of cyclic existence are persons of least capacity. So here, in this even smallest capacity, when we're looking at the categories of the Buddhist philosophy, this first capacity is seeking happiness in the next life. It's looking towards one's future life and wishing to have happiness in the higher realms of cyclic existence. So it's desiring that those happy realms of cyclic existence. So we find that presented there up to the great vehicle potential where there's a desire to become a complete Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings at the great scope. But we definitely find that even at the smallest scope, when we're looking at it in terms of the stages of the path, and we look at it in terms of Atisha's lamp for the path to enlightenment, even at that smallest scope, it's aimed at the most basic level at the next life, and not focused on this life in terms of goals themselves. And it's focused on the happinesses of next life, the happiness at the medium scope of nirvana, the happiness of Buddhahood at the great scope. So that's what happiness is referring to in those cases, and it's not the happiness of the current life that one is abiding in, it's future lives.
평원대도 주주에 제부송도 쉐바샤.
That's so.
강지 타는 강다기 쿠유도와 장달라 라니 된도 니셰바 제부든 타마시. 타마시 말베 총도 데데가로 돼야.
Less so.
강지 타는 강다기 쿠유도와 장달라 제와 심한 편지게 된주이도와데 된도 니에데 제부 타마서 그래 좀 총어서 그래서 어떤 데는
So in Atisha's lamp for the path to enlightenment, it says, understand that there are persons of three capacities, small, medium, and great. I shall write clearly, distinguishing their individual characteristics. So it begins with that statement, and then it goes on to say, those who know that those who by whatever means seek for themselves no more than the pleasures of cyclic existence are persons of least capacity. So we would compare that to this number 2, virtuous actions with a predominant attitude of not looking after these. After these is referring to those first category of things of this life, the enjoyments, the body, and the actual existence of this life. So we would begin with this desire to definitely emerge at the small scope level, or where there's a desire to emerge from the lower realms in the next life.
Jibusung the Ganji Tan the Ganda, Ku, the Watantala, Rani, Jibutan Tamash, Sibi Deli Jashin, Debi Lele Dutani, Ganji Rajistani, Jibutan Dinsha, what does Tinmalade do? Ah, the Dala Tindi, Ludon Longe, Sibal Matawa, Seshama Penji Sandan, Chongotan, Dindan, Jibuchembu, Sungal Guyan Mudwe, Kalit the Lenzarwa. The Tindi, Ludon Longe, the Sibal Matawa. Unseshamangotu doa de nia, tabi doa de nia, Sanji Gumo de nia, what the Gama Yundu.
Is Sanjay Dewa the London
Tiba Chembo,
London go?
Kalilun.
So when we look at the goals represented in the persons of three capacities, we look at the goal of the pleasure of cyclic existence being aimed at the next life. So here we find this renunciation, this virtue that predominantly excludes those attachments to this life's body and enjoyments and existence itself. So when we look first, the person of small capacity is looking for the pleasures of cyclic existence and abandonment of the lower realms of cyclic existence, so in his or her next life. So this is the goal. When we get to the next level of happiness, the happiness of liberation, we find it represented in the lamp in this way. And here we find this renunciation present as well. It says those who seek peace for themselves alone, turning away from the worldly pleasures and avoiding destructive actions, are said to be of middling capacity. So here, this is representing the practitioner who wants to be free, turn away from all worldly pleasures. So here, once again, we find this renunciation being represented here. So this practitioner is turning away from all the worldly activities, pleasures, the things of this life, and then excluding the next life as well. And then when we then move on to the highest level practitioner, the person of great capacity, that practitioner who has gone through the stages of wishing to have just the pleasures of cyclic existence in the higher realms and abandon the lower realms, to the next level where he or she wishes to have liberation for him or herself alone, to that final stage of wishing for Buddhahood. Then when one wishes for Buddhahood, he or she is wishing for this throwing karma, which creates that position. So it says those who through their personal suffering truly want to end completely all the suffering of others are a person of supreme capacity. So then this becomes their goal. They wish for a throwing karma that projects this Buddhahood. Whereas the medium capacity is looking to have this liberation, and the small capacity is looking for a projecting or a throwing karma that creates the position of a higher realm rebirth. So each of these practitioners is engaging in these practices and renouncing the things that they are renouncing for the means of achieving their desired happiness. So each one of them desires a different level of happiness. The small scope practitioner desiring the level of pleasure of cyclic existence, happiness of the higher realms. A medium scope practitioner desiring the happiness which is liberation. So he or she is looking to create a projecting or a throwing karma that creates that basis of liberation. And then the highest scope practitioner is looking for a throwing karma that or a projecting karma that projects that basis of Buddha, is looking for Buddhahood. So they are practicing these desires to emerge from the various states, emerge from the lower realms, emerge from the potential of cyclic existence altogether, and then emerge from the potential for just an abiding nirvana, wishing for a non-abiding nirvana, and a Buddha, a position of Buddha. Okay, Dixon.
다 종주는 저기 레니니제 다 대신도 신진라 뇌선 시초와 나스 신진라 뇌선 신진라 뇌비서 받대 no said she will know what he never send me with us.
Okay. So do.
That's his yelling, he just she will by ina,
Less
he
so.
never send me with us.
Less so.
He chishin, pension shechua.
Less so.
She yelling, he did not pay me samba,
Less so.
shechua, you're not the never send me with
Less
us.
so.
Ya Kunchu dan Lama la subala, Nasen shechewas.
Less so.
Kunchu sun dan Lama la subatul, Nasen shechewa yobayina.
Less so.
Di Tibi Jabut Central
Less
Mingures.
so.
Na Kunchu dan Lama la subata la Teba dan.
Less so.
Maybe samba shechewa yona.
Okay.
Di Gin Jabut Central
Less so.
Mingures.
Less so.
Ya Pama dan Lama la subala.
Less so.
Ya Pama dan Lama la subala. Pendubala Koshin, Sheba Mazu, Sambe ne, Magawa, Tsende Nulasa, Yan Susu Pama J, Lama la Subata Sul, Susu Pama de Susul Pendu, Shincheba Jenre, Susu Lama Susul, Lama da Pama, Susul Pendu Shinro, Pendubal ne Pendubala Koshins, Sheba Mazua, and the Pama and Shama Majibaje, and the Sulama to Shama Majibaina, the Deba Dege, Debit Sendel Mingures, Sambe Namagoa, Sendel Nulasa, Yana Susulama, Pama to Zule, and Susul Kadin Chebber, Susulama Susul Kadin Chebber, Susupama Susul Kadin Chebber,
Less so.
Hayan Pendubi, Susul Lamal Pendu Agzanlo. And Pamal Pendu Sanlo Yabaina, Sheba Zui Samba, She Chine, Gawat Sendela Nua, Sayungajil Sos, what the Marvel, what the Kalelu.
Rinpoche, Dunba. The Yanjur, the Dundagare.
Kaba,
Dunba. The Jayure. The Dunba. The Pama Dan Lama. The Kajin Yomare. The Kajin Yomare Dan Drabude.
Pama the Lamarwa,
In the Dundagare. The Migewa Gare Garshene. The Dundagare.
Ta Yan Lama Dan, Pama la Subasarwa,
Lessa.
Yan Lama Dan, Lama Sukadin Chebro,
Lesso.
Ne Pama Dan, Lama la Sukadin Chebre, Till Pendu Sama Mebache,
Pembo Samba Meba.
Meba.
Okay.
Sheba Mazuas, and the Kadin Cheba, Pamal Shama Majibaje, Lama Matebaje, or Tanjeba, you know what they Magor, Magi, Deba, the Sendel Min Wures.
Okay.
Tasu Lama, the Pama Suzu Kadin Chebere, and the Lama Tebatan, and the Chebambuatan, Pamal Penduya, Shamaguya, Pamal Tenezuya, San Yabaina,
Lesso.
T. David Sendel Mingures,
Okay.
Sayungajil Sondos,
Lesso.
Marba, what the Kale Luda, the relation Kalegala Junamar.
Lesso. So it says then number 3. So we've gone through number 1 and 2. So number 3, in the same way, non-virtuous actions that you have done with an attitude of strong malice towards living beings. So having a strong amount of harmful intent towards living beings, if you engage in this way, it's karma that gives rise to an immediate effect in this life. Virtuous actions that you have cultivated with an attitude of deep compassion and helpfulness. So here, desire to benefit. So any actions that have been done with the motivation or the desire to that has been motivated by compassion and a desire to be helpfulness is helpful, falls categorically under karma that will give rise in the here and now in this life. Non-virtuous actions that you have done with great animosity towards the 3 jewels, gurus and the like, so having a sense of negativity or negative feelings towards the 3 jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, and the teachers and so forth. This produces a experience in this life. And then the next virtuous actions that you've cultivated with an attitude of deep faith and believe in these. So here, this is a faith and conviction or a belief those are the best words, in relation to the 3 jewels, in relation to the gurus and so forth. So this becomes a great amount of virtue and gives rise to an experience in this life. So then it says, non-virtuous actions that you have done with an attitude of enmity towards those who have helped you, such as parents and gurus, and an attitude of not repaying them for what they have done. So here, there has been a great amount of kindness that our parents, that gurus have shown us, and here we have no desire to be of benefit to them. We have no desire to repay their kindness in any way whatsoever. So this non-virtue that's motivated by this attitude, which doesn't wish to benefit those beings who have been so beneficial and kind to us, creates the experience immediately in this life. But then if the opposite is true, if it's a virtuous action that's done in conjunction with a strong attitude of wishing to repay those who have helped you, then it becomes a virtuous action that gives rise to an experience in this life. So it says that you have cultivated, so that you have brought about. It's brought about by recognizing the kindness that these beings have shown us, and the help, how helpful they have been to us, and then wishing to be helpful to them, wishing because of their kindness to be in kind in some way back to them. So with this motivation, it becomes a karma that is experienced in this specific life. And we find all of these points being made in a Sangha's level of yogic deeds.
This one. That jet is one. Cindy Ludon Lonju, Sibala, Tawashi, Sambi Waki, Sendilmi with Gije, Tadala Matai, Sendilmi with Nije, Tejindo, Sijela, Nusen Shechawadan, Hijit and Pemi Samba Shechawani, Jeje, Da Gonju, Lama La Subala, Nasen Shechawadan, Tadala, Ne Tebadan, Meba, maybe Samba Shechawas. True, Tene du marvedu. Tene Pamadan, Yan Pamadan, Lama La Subala, and Pendubala, Cushin, Sheba Mazu, Sambi, Sendel Nuan Jolasa. Tendela Sheba Zu, Sambi Shechawane, and Sendela Nuan, Sayumazu, Jet Marveje, Jekuzul Takat and Dismaje.
So we find that when we count that there are 8 points that are made, and there are always the opposites. So when we have the non-virtue, then it's opposite. So we first non-virtuous actions that you've done predominantly with an attitude of looking after your body, resources, and existence, and then the virtuous actions, which there is an absence of this, looking after one's body, resources, and existence. So here, this is an attachment to the things of this life. If virtue is done with the absence of this, without the attachment to the things of this life, then it becomes this. Then it becomes a karma that you experience in this life. So if it's non-virtuous and is focused on this life, or virtuous and focused not on this life, then in both cases they give rise to a result in this life. Then the next two are having malice towards living beings, or having deep compassion or helpfulness, a desire to benefit. So we find that these two give rise to experience right within this life. And then the next grouping, we find non-virtuous actions done with great animosity towards the three jewels and gurus, and then those opposite actions which are done with deep faith or a great respect in the three jewels or the gurus. So that both of those sets have the ability to give rise to experience in this life. And then the next two, non-virtue, that you've done with not wishing to repay the kindness, with an attitude of not wishing to repay the kindness of our parents and gurus, and then the opposite, a virtuous action that's done with a strong attitude of a wish to repay the kindness of our gurus and our parents and so forth. So this makes for a total of 8, and we find these 8 being presented in Asanga's levels of yogic deeds.
What does he have again with that? The so good send him here what the late
So the lies in this life are these 8 karmas. So we have these 8 karmas. that present how what karmas arise in this life. I'm sorry, it's so choppy. You know what I mean, though. It's clear.
다 상가가 사용하지를 상가가 사용하지를 손으로 사용하지 상가가 사용하지를 손뒤에 간주도 손 발레죠 다 간주도 된주도 손 발레네 어디 사용하지를 어디 수송으로 어디 통주유적 지연도지 어디 수강 해봐지네 어디 가서 사용하지 때 말বে 사등하러 사등하는 사용하지서 여러
Leso.
상가그 사용하지는 여러 사용하지 사용하지를 손도서 다 통주유적 레지
Leso.
사용하지를 손도서
Leso.
다 사용하지를 손바나지 안는 가서 천님이야도 어때서 마도 될 주sen시베 집고야서라 그러다 천들 따와다 못 따와다 어떤게 레드 저번 천들 미바데 안는 가서 리바 두두서베 리바 땅다 그 두서베데 어디 천디 르던 롱셔다 세발라 따와 셰치 어디바사바 가게 저번 천들 용그레스 천들 상가 송바로다
Leso.
천들 용도 주sen고서 나칼레 합마르바 갈고 그러다 다달라 마타이 사미와 과투게 저번 천들 간다스 용그레스 땅다 고서나 어디 때 가보만 아 신도 고주이 나고 고주들라 종제 고주 신도 고주니 여러니 종제 고주 신도 고주 종제 고주 다 가서 돈이 사나다 지왕 하시 사나다 와도 그 종제 고주래 땅다게 뭐도지 땅다고 루투다 뭐도지 땅다를 때는 시도겐도 그거로 종제 고주서 종제 고주 돈이 두서 차버려대 내가 맨때 임베지 그는 주세는 산단 갈래 쿠코하지 진스맹에 오르다
Leso.
너들로 와대 주세도 그 붙이거나 예식 당다마도 그거라 서베 아 이미롱저 체지 대제베 이미롱저 체지 다 간데 다 와대 소마르베 주의들라 물로시 젠라 제수 바바이스 안에 상지가 송샤베 덴바지다 덴바니 두서 야번 내도나 안 어디 신도 고주거리 통주 윤주글레 선들 미와게 진로
Leso.
어디 속걸로 이체제네 페이지 또는 페이지 인사르베 주의들라 물로시 젠라 제수 바바이스 상지 제수 고주라 나 가지 토종 지와 대 동바니 텐데 대님 코나 아야도 말바 아야도 어디 속롱도 자자 말메데
Tetsum yuna Tony Dao da.
다 동부 돈이 시고르스 돈이 시네 돈이를 고아차서 손나 근데 상지가 통주 윤주가 레두스 저부 천들 민사들 이시제네 또 그랬어 대니 코나 이시샤스
Okay, so boo.
어디 잡은 인사르베다
So we find this presentation of these 8 points that are given related to karma that you experience in the here and now. We find that the source for this is a sangha of yogic deeds. So when we look at source material for the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, we find the Kangjur, the authentic, the pronouncements of Lord Buddha in the Tenjur, the authentic Indian commentaries, and the Sangha's text, which categorically falls under the Tenjur, is within the collection of texts. We have the 5 treatises on the levels, and then the 2 compendiums, and this is a text that falls under the 5 treatises on the levels, and this is called the levels of yogic deeds. So in this text we find this presentation of these 8, and these points that, okay, so a non-virtuous action that is done predominantly of looking at the body of this life and resources of this life and the existence and so forth of this life is a karma that gives rise to an experience in the here and now. And virtuous actions that are done without looking at these give rise to experience in the here and now. This point that is being made is we have to rely upon a text. Because when we look at the specifics of the karmas that we engage in and how they give rise to an experience, this would categorically fall under extremely hidden phenomena. So when we divide phenomena into categories, we have, just as a translator's note, manifest, and then we have the two categories of hidden phenomena. We have regular hidden phenomena, and then we have extremely hidden phenomena. In the regular hidden phenomena, we find subjects such as emptiness and previous lives and so forth. And these are topics that through correct signs and reasoning, we can arrive at the understanding of them and arrive at their a valid cognition related to them, an understanding related to them. So emptiness, we can use a reason such as dependent origination, and by using the sign or reasoning of dependent origination, we can establish emptiness. So emptiness is a hidden phenomena, but it can be established by reasoning in the same way that previous lives in the continuum of lives can be established by reasoning. But when we get to topics such as what the Buddha stated, that through generosity comes the enjoyments in Chingide, and through ethics comes happiness. Such statements of these, fall categorically under the extremely hidden phenomena, things that we can't just prove through correct sign. We have to have a level of faith and conviction in Scripture and establish that because the Buddha made statements about these other things that are true, about these subtle points of reality that are true and related to this hidden phenomena, then we have to be able to rely on his or her statements related to other phenomena that we can't arrive at through a sign and reasoning. So in Arya Deva's 400 verses, it talks about those who have doubts about the pronouncements that Lord Buddha made related to hidden phenomena, or extremely hidden phenomena, should look at the teaching on emptiness. So once one looks at the teaching on emptiness and then begins to understand the flawlessness of that teaching, and then looks to the Four Noble Truths and the Two Truths and finds the flawless nature of those teachings, then one can assume that the other teachings given in relation to subjects that can't be arrived at through reasoning must be true as well. So this is a cognition that you arrive at, or a truth that you arrive at through faith, and faith in the basis, and the faith in that the Buddha gave all of these other explanations about things no one else did that were very subtle and hidden. So therefore, the other things that were stated must be true too.
What that Sunday told you legend or legend David Sunday Mingres.
So these are 8 karmas that are said to give rise to an experience in this life because they are karma that you experience here and now.
What is Tonju Jeding Representative means Sombatella and Shingu Tazun Marba, Tazun Jejuba. The Tazun say Tagarizana, the Tomba intended the new Kunyashas, the Hell Tomba Nite, Tomba Nit Shezasuna, Sanjiga Sum Tomba Nila Malore, Tazumba Le Malores.
So we can look at this and say that these 8 actions are actions that give rise to an experience in the here and now, rise to an experience in this lifetime. But when we hear these things, we have to have a doubt arise because this seems like it's difficult to prove. So we have to then use our understanding of the other points that were made to arrive at a non-controvertible place where we believe in it. We believe in these things that are being stated, and it is not controvertible because we use our analysis of other presentations that have been given related to the nature of reality and find their flawless nature, and then we apply that same level of reasoning, if this has flawless nature, and these things have been spoken of in this very subtle level are flawless, then these other things also have to be flawless. So then when we one subject that we look at, as Aryadeva has stated, that when we begin to have doubts about these statements Buddha made about very hidden phenomena or extremely hidden phenomena, we need to look at the presentation of emptiness, which is the ultimate nature of reality, and then our doubts are quelled.
What then Santa what the Zukalo that Shindu Kujunda
So
Tonju legit the central memories. Sanji Sumba, Sanga Sumba, Pinga Maris and Ashi Tuma, Tazun Roda, Tazun Sadulote, Sanji Sunde, and then Damagil Molore, Damanil Molore, Tony the Moloa Yiza, what does le Molores, and then
So when we look at these statements that have been made about these 8 things give rise to experience in this life, in the here and now, and we say that a Sangha said this, and we say that Buddha said this, we are going to have a doubt because we can't see this. We can't see these things. We can't understand these things. But then we have to look at the other topics that the Buddha taught. We have to look at the Four Noble Truths and the incontrovertible, Malua, Malua Sena.
Suzi Mishi
Sade Malua Ripa.
Suzi Mishi Zucemetoro. Zucemetova Inza Zula Maloris. Sanji Sun de Gay, the Susumba Kangal Natria Maro.
Less so.
Natria is a Maloris.
So faultless, flawless. Malua is like not changing, not truth. Rinpoche said Denbo, which is truth, unchanging, like a truth. So the Buddha's explanation of the Four Noble Truths is untarnished, is flawless. The Buddha's teaching on the Two Truths is flawless. The Buddha's teaching on emptiness is flawless. I think that's the best word, is flawless, is flawless. Therefore, we can say that these other topics that he's explained must be flawless as well, because we find everything else unflawed, and we find all of these other things that can be attacked by logic unflawed.
Sanji Sun to what they Shindu Kuju to the Maloa in there, Daba Jisumba Maloa image, Dani Sumba Maloa image, Tuni Sumba Maloa image.
So why is his teaching on this flawless? Because the teaching on the Two Truths is flawless. The teaching on emptiness is flawless. The teaching on the Four Noble Truths is flawless.
What then man was somebody?
That's so.
Yeah.
So this is what I think.
Yeah.
So we will then move on to the concluding mandala offering and dedication prayer. Thank you once again, everybody, for coming. And I apologize for any omissions or mistakes that I made in the translation. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. I dedicate whatever virtues I have collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Losang Drakpa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri and likewise Samantabhadra as well, with whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the 3 times. I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. In that pure land surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness, all-powerful Avalokiteshvara, Tenzin Gyatso, may you stay until samsara's end. I pray for the long life of the precious Khensur Wandak, upholder of scriptural and realizational doctrines, spiritual friend who trained extensively in the 5 great philosophical texts with exceptional wisdom and perseverance. Tuji Rinpoche